This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. It's February 2nd, 2024. I'm Charlie Fink with Roni Abovitz, Ted Shilowitz, and we are live and in person at the Sunset Marquis in Los Angeles.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So for most people listen to the podcast on audio, right? They put their AirPods in and their earbuds and they listen. But in the rare occasion that you do want to watch a video version on YouTube, this might be the one to watch because we're actually all in real life together.
You know, in 178
In
episodes,
meat space.
178 episodes, 4 years, we have never recorded
done
this
it
show in
live.
person.
And
We've
you've
been to
never done
many
it live
events.
from the sunset.
Never from Sunset at any time.
At AWE, we did a whole series of interviews in person
Yes, that's true.
together that were built into the podcast.
Yes,
This
that's
is
true.
the first time we're doing this.
It's like a
Absolutely. Yes.
regular episode, and it is a propitious day, my friends.
It is.
It is February 2nd, 2024, which is the Apple Vision Pro launch day.
2/24.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, as you guys were postulating this morning on text, is today Newton 2 day, or is today the advent of spatial computing moving from the exotic to the beginnings of mainstream?
I'm going to advocate that the device is the Apple Newton of VR, which was not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing at all.
Right. To be the Apple Newton, like at some point later, it begat the iPhone and the iPad.
Right.
But this really feels like the Newton to me.
There
What
were
do you
there
guys
were
think?
many things.
I
about
don't
the-
have great feelings about the Newton. It strikes me as kind of that was the end of the interim guy who came in after Jobs before they brought Jobs
That
back.
was the John Scully.
The
moment.
John Scully moment.
In fact,
right?
it's covered really well in General Magic because of the investment that
And
he
they
made
copy General Magic.
in General Magic and in the Newton simultaneously. But I think I'm more with Roni's state of mind about this. I think,
And you've tried it.
oh yeah, and progress takes an interesting road, right? So if we look at the last 30, 40 years of people trying to figure out ways to wear something that is your audio visual experience, and then apply the Apple logic to that, this is step one in potentially a very long journey. And if you study what we're recording this with a microphone and a laptop, right? Now people use laptops, they use tablets of all size that they call
Got the
iPhones,
watch.
and we use watches. We have all these different devices that have screens on them of various formulations, including fairly mainstream VR devices in the hundreds of dollars now from our friends at Meta that have really pushed that envelope very far down the usability and affordability road.
And there's like what 20 to 30 million of those type of devices out there. There's
Probably
like
all told, yeah.
I think there's like less than zero chance the thing goes over 1 million units.
This first gen device, I
Maybe.
think that's probably, I think that's Apple's plan. Is this
over the lifetime, a couple of years, right?
well,
They're not going to sell 1 million this year. They can't even make 1
No.
million.
We'll see.
No. I think their brand is so powerful. I wouldn't be surprised. AVP pulls 1 million, but out of 1 billion or 2 billion iPhones, that's 1/1000th of their market. So that's what would make it the Newton. Now, 8 generations later, it's actually gonna have the iPhone moment.
It's
It'll be what
It's
this is the iPhone moment when Apple ships that, what Charlie's got on his head. Wireless, better resolution.
very LA in the
AVP.
middle of the winter to have these on your
You
head.
put it on the
Excuse me.
table, it charges for 10 hours. But no, but that, like this, let me just show it to the camera. This would have been the iPhone moment. This is what I thought they were going to do, not a type of big Oculus.
Yeah.
But there's also another thing, 2, 2, and 24. You couldn't pick a more unlucky number from the Chinese side.
Is that right?
You couldn't. No, I thought the biggest unlucky number is like a 4. So I don't know who thought about that one, but
The only thing it makes me think of, because it's topical, is the Taylor Swift 13 dynamic, which you guys know about this crazy conspiracy theory.
no.
That 211, you add those numbers together, you get 13. That's the day of the Super Bowl.
Oh.
Taylor Swift's favorite number is 13. The 49ers 49. You add those two numbers together, you get 13. There's one other 13 that I
Oh,
can't remember.
God.
Watch the
This
Stephen
is-
Colbert
Wait, how
show.
did you go
And
from
it turns
launching-
out that Travis Kelce is the devil.
Wait. How did we get to? No, we love Taylor
It's-
Swift. We like.
Just when you talk about lucky numbers and unlucky numbers, it just struck me because it is
So-
popular culture right now.
So I have to ask you this, and Roni,
Uh-oh.
when you see Tim Cook on the cover of Vanity Fair and a breathless profile, doesn't a little bit feel like that should have been me on the cover
Oh,
of
that's
Vanity
that's an
Fair?
interesting.
Did you?
Roni
Does that
question.
you have that ping? That's something I would have. Where are you?
I'll be really candid and honest. I'd say no, because I had the cover of Wired. I had my share.
That's right.
But you were on
and
the cover of Forbes too, as I
the cover
recall.
of Forbes. Let Tim have his day. And by the way, the cover, with all due respect to everybody, I don't think it's something Steve would have done. That cover was reminiscent of basically Palmer Luckey
Yeah.
wearing the Oculus on the cover of Time.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
jumping up in the air barefoot.
that-
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have, and people are gonna go, it's like, why am I being critical? I'll be very positive, very critical in a second. It doesn't have the design elegance you would expect from Apple today. After
Mm.
tens of billions of dollars and the shrinkage of size and all those things. That being said, it is an incredibly well
Do you remember
engineered
what the
device.
quote is on the cover of the Vanity Fair? It was something interesting. His something moment. Do you guys remember what it was? It was
No, but it's
Breakaway
in
moment.
fact, let
Yeah,
me
well,
see.
let's
I
take a
think
look.
I actually have a picture
Yeah,
of it.
Yeah, it was in our text. I can-
Because I was gonna send it to
the
my
moonshot.
the moonshot inside the making of the Apple Vision Pro.
Which I think is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not really a moonshot. I mean, there's nothing, look,
He's
the-
like almost one of the last guys doing them.
Yeah.
I mean, the moonshot's been going on since like 2011,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's sort of like, okay, we showed up to the game. Okay, you're doing the Apple version of it, but you're not the pioneers. You didn't do the breakthrough. Every single thing in that device was done by one of the companies that didn't come like 30 years ago, maybe a year or two ago or 5 years ago. So it's like Apple's take on this. It's going to be very well engineered. I'm
Yeah.
sure the resolution's great. 2 years from now, every Oculus system will have the same
yeah, the
resolution
resolution is
at a
very
price point well
commonplace.
below
It's
$1,000.
really interesting the number of reviews that I have read
Here comes
over-
breakfast.
over-
I know,
oh my
we're
God.
literally gonna have breakfast
live and
slides.
in person. It is breakfast.
This is all messy. This is like the live recording. This is like
You know what we didn't do
this is
just
like
as
live
we're
as a
taking
Greek,
a
you
break,
know?
taking a
That's it.
break for the Chow to show up. I wanted to say
You
that
can't edit
Tommy
this
Palm,
out.
I'm not going to edit it out.
Okay.
Tommy Palm, the president of Resolution Games, is our guest.
He's our
today.
guest today.
Yeah, he's a CEO of Resolution
And they are
Games.
building for the Apple Vision Pro.
Yes,
right?
and they've got Dungeons and Dragons for the Quest 3.
Thank
So we've got a lot to talk about with them.
But Ted, you got to say something nice about it because you've tried it.
Well,
I'm actually going to be able to try it today, I think.
here's what I will say first about, and this is well tread ground for us, that we talk about Apple doesn't innovate, Apple executes, and Apple
They
polishes,
used to
and Apple-
innovate. The Apple
It's-
one with Wozniak,
It's very, there are a
the
couple
original
of
iPod
very
was
distinct-
quite a breakthrough.
Yeah, but it wasn't the first.
It wasn't the first,
Right.
but when it came out, relative to everything else, it was much more of a breakthrough. Like you have to give them credit for the real breakthrough things and separate
Absolutely.
this from those. This isn't the iPhone. This isn't the iPod. This isn't like the Mac. This is the Newton. This reminds me most of the Newton, which wasn't a terrible device. It was just not the thing.
The Newton come on, the Newton didn't work.
Well,
Oh, come on.
Listen, there's,
Oh, come on.
there's a
One
whole
of my friends
culture
was on
around
the
the
Newton team. No, it's like.
I think the thing that's really
Go
important
Newton.
for our listeners to synthesize is if you study Apple gamesmanship, how Apple plays the game, you can argue innovation, but I argue that there's very little that Apple really did first, that Apple really came into the world and said, we're going to invent this and design this, going all the way back to the mouse and IBM Research Park, right? It was like Steve saw something and the kernel of it was, we can make this better. And what Apple's legacy now is with this head-worn device is they see the ecosystem. They've been studying the ecosystem since the Samsung Gear VR, when we slapped a phone in it and everybody was like, well, that's really never gonna hold water, but like, here we are, so let's try and use that. The various versions of tethered VR systems that are exotic and wonderful in certain ways, but are never gonna go mainstream as a consumer device.
What's the geek reference here?
It's Pixar teapot. Don't waste my time.
Also, every Autodesk Maya thing
Yeah,
comes with the
Yeah, with the
teapot.
teapot, right? So the point is that this could be an interesting watershed moment, but the difficulty that we all understand, because we have synthesized these head-worn displays for so many cycles, is the difficulty factor of this is way more than the laptop screen that we're working on, the
Oh, it's
iPhone
10,
moment.
20 times better. And
right?
Apple, Tim Cook has said this is the hardest thing they've
Right.
ever built, maybe one of the most complex computing things they ever
So
conceived.
ultimately, you got to give them some time, and you probably got to give them some time to make some tactical errors. I still think the external battery pack is,
Come on, you
is
can
a
interrupt. Thank
tactical
you.
error that they have to fix. I think
That's for the big boy there.
the see-through-ish kind of eyeball
The eyeballs are
thing
weird.
is a
Let's
first gen
get
folly that
no
will probably
eyeballs,
go
get rid of
away.
the eyeballs. Yeah, make it go away.
But other than that, look, the device
And it's too heavy.
is exceptional in certain ways, and it will find interesting moments for people beyond what the meta ecosystem has found with gaming. And that's kind of an interesting thing to study.
But here's the thing, like the use case of wearing it on an airplane. Like Ted, you and I were talking about this week with Charlie. I could see that, you know, and even the idea that you're going to disappear reality, all that's kind of cool. You could still do that with almost any VR system, but can you wear the thing on a 5-hour flight, California to New York? Can you wear it to Tokyo?
Well, right now you're
and
gonna have to
watch
bring a lot
2
of
or 3
batteries with you.
movies?
Yeah, you're gonna have to deal with the battery problem. And we were talking about this yesterday. If you have a seat that's gonna lay back enough that you can effectively make the top of the
So right,
plane your
offload some of that
screen,
weight.
lean back.
distribute
There
it,
is no
yeah.
battery on the back, right? It's just the strap.
Yeah.
So if you can lean back this way and watch, the answer is likely yes. If you're sitting at any kind of normal pitch, less than an hour, I think that thing is going to be difficult to.
So that's why I think this is the new. It is not a consumer thing.
Yep.
And I think they're calling it a developer thing, but they're winking. And
Yeah.
look, we did some of that at Magic Leap. Like
Yeah.
it's for developers, it's for creators, it's for early consumers. But for an early consumer, you're thinking you're going to wear this on that plane and watch like 3 movies like you would in your iPad. And that would actually be an awesome thing. And I guarantee you Apple will get there. But on the
think
Vision
they'll get
Pro,
there.
who is going to be hardcore enough to wear the thing for 5-6 hours plugged into a battery? And then what does your face look like after all that weight's on there? So the
Well-
weight thing actually bothers me, like 600 grams.
It's
Like we know it needs to be 200 grams or less. How are they going to shave away 400 grams of weight?
I think that's just the evolutionary process, right?
So I put up a link on my Forbes column, which also comes out as Spatial Beats on Monday on AR Insider, no firewall, for those of you who read it. And there is a link there to Road to VR's helpful summary of all the reviews of the Apple Vision Pro. I think there are no negative ones. I don't think anyone is recommending that a regular person rush out and buy one right now. And there were a few that were borderline religious, but I
It's
think
brand
James
power, isn't
Cameron,
it?
James Cameron was probably the worst. He said it was a quasi-religious experience, which I don't, maybe he's never done VR before, but
no, we've had plenty of VR.
But isn't it like, doesn't it, the brand power of Apple, let's just talk about that for a second, irrespective of the tech, your anticipation and the psychology and belief in Apple in a religious way actually changes your mindset and perception. There's like no doubt about it. So I think there's a lot of people who will overcome all issues that they would have not have overcome with any other company and accept all the flaws we're discussing because they're so devoutly in belief of the sort of Apple cult. And I mean, we were that.
Well, if you,
After Magic Leap, I can't be because I competed with them and they're
Yes.
kind of vicious as a competitor. I think I said that on the air live.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim.
I think it's interesting because for the groups of people that have used it, the thing that I see over and over again is there are these moments of magical inspiration. And a lot of it has to do with how much energy and how much refinement they put into that launch experience and that look at the icons, do this very comfortably, and it really, really works. The thing about VR as a
It's
general
smooth and
category,
silky, right? Like that part's good.
is it never really 100% works. You have to kind of get into this zone where you're accepting the flaws, right? And that's part of the valley of like, I accept this and I know what the limitations are, and it's still quite magical.
So their UI is good, right? Let's
The
get
UI is amazing for a first gen sort of practicality use case, and the touch points of how you use the photos in it and how you use videos in it, all the things you do on your Mac. So it's like if you're a gamer that plays on a PC and uses a Mac every day like we do, think about the delta between those two, right? If you're a PC gamer or a PlayStation gamer, that's your device for gaming. You don't game on your Mac, even though you could. You use your Mac for productivity, for your emails, for your texting, for your podcasting, for your looking at your photos, sharing your photos, doing all that stuff. It's a very refined experience. Watching movies, everything's very refined on that front. This is essentially the head-worn version. Like I've said probably on this podcast for months now, it's a Mac on your face.
But can you have like infinite number of Mac screens yet?
Not infinite, but you can have a number of
A whole
them.
bunch of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you can have a logical, like, this is how you'd want to
So-
do it. So if you're a stockbroker and you want to kind of use it to put up,
So I have a
multiple
recording
charts
studio,
and things like
right?
that.
With
Yeah.
a really.
You'll have a virtual recording
Pro.
studio.
I mean,
Absolutely.
wouldn't that be awesome to have all these screens around and all your virtual instruments and panels, like, but
Oh
can
yeah,
you
I
really
didn't
do
think
that
about
now?
that. That would be
No, no,
that'd be
I
epic.
mean, Pro Audio is a big Mac Pro, iMac
Yeah, yeah.
Pro
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they all want, as
Well,
I
look,
would,
there are
like,
companies that are, Xreal is working on this and has been. There are 5 or 6 companies doing glasses that give you the
Multiple screen
metaphor of
experience.
multiple screens.
everybody does that, right?
It has never really caught on because none of the devices get to that level of refinement that you want to use it over and over again. And this is what we need to
Or
see
where,
come out.
here's the problem, if I have the refinement in the Vision Pro for the first 15 minutes, but I have a 10-hour recording session, how long until how long until it's like actually there? I mean, are we talking Newton to iPhone? Are we talking like a decade?
I would think.
Um,
I would think you're talking 5 years.
Yeah, I think things don't take a decade anymore to either find their success or find their failure or find their neutral point of this is how you use that, right? Like there are things in the Apple ecosystem that people use sometimes,
I mean,
but not all the
Didn't
time.
this take a decade
Pretty close to
to
a
get
decade.
good,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's going to take them at least 3 years to
3
come
to
up
5
with a
years to get to a,
$2,000 device that can do all these things.
to get to
And-
the iPhone.
Yeah.
moment is probably 3 to 5 years away.
Yeah.
But we should say congrats to Tim and team.
Yeah.
right?
yeah, I mean, it's but they're doing something that's impossible. So let's not forget that.
Can I say one thing about this whole field, though? I feel like spatial computing, which the term is not something they invented, it's been
Not at
around
all.
for actually like almost 20 years.
At least, yeah.
It's like a very seductive siren.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's cost Mark hundreds of billions of market cap, probably close to 100 billion.
Well,
of
guess
investment.
what? After their earnings
They're
call
fine.
yesterday,
They're fine.
they gave it all back to him.
No, but you know what?
The-
Like,
The
He overpaid.
metaverse punishment is over.
Yeah, even after
Tim-
Congress and the whole thing, it's.
Oh,
fine.
it's what I
It's
mean.
all-
That is part of the news. We should segue.
we should
Just
talk about
before
that.
we bring in Tommy, Mark Zuckerberg must have a neck brace on because on Wednesday he's in Washington having to apologize on national television to the parents of a child who committed suicide because of bullying on Facebook.
Yeah.
He was absolutely had to sit there in a suit in a hot room while people took pictures of him, and senators scored political points off of his willingness to take it and to show up. He flies back to Silicon Valley, has his earnings call in which he says they've had a record Q4. He announces a dividend of almost $6 for a technology company to give a dividend of $6. WTF, and a stock buyback.
Right.
They added on the XR front that they had passed $1 billion in
We built the
revenue.
machine.
They passed $1 billion in revenue for the Reality Labs division for the first time.
Yep.
Now, that said, the cost of launching the Quest 3 was about
Yeah,
$5 billion.
that's still a loss
So,
area.
Charlie, they're also spending that billion in revenue is about 15 billion a year roughly in ongoing expenses.
Yes.
right.
So to make 1 billion
Yeah.
in XR
I
today
know.
costs 50.
There were so many people on the socials yesterday yesterday afternoon taking a victory lap about that. And I'm like, wow, that is a selective. I thought that was kind of the least impressive thing on their call. But I guess, in the spirit of it being Vision Pro Day, let us all say congratulations to Zuck because he got his beating over the metaverse. His stock was, down to
He's on the other side of it.
120. He's way on the other
On the
side.
other
Of it.
side of the Rubicon.
And he's getting validated by Tim.
Yes, he is.
Now there's a
he
race
is.
and they will make a market that's good for everybody. So everyone in the field, including, the company I started, are all going to benefit from this giant
Oh, yeah.
push of tens of billions of R&D and marketing dollars. It'll change the supply chain, create consumer. It'll actually create.
Well,
a big
and of
market.
course it helps developers because it's a
Helps
bigger
developers.
ecosystem and they can have a
It
cross-platform
will put,
ecosystem.
those
at
two
some point.
fighting it out will actually create hundreds, maybe thousands of sub businesses, and it's a good thing for.
But
the
there's a third and a fourth wild card here.
Okay.
The fourth we don't know much about because that's the Samsung,
Yes,
Google,
coming,
Qualcomm thing,
right.
which really interesting kind of potential wild card because somebody is going to own the Android part of the AR glasses space.
Absolutely.
And is that going to be Meta or could it be Xreal, which just announced that they raised another 60 million
It's
at
it's
a
not
$1
gonna be
billion
that.
value.
It's not gonna be that who I shall not name.
Yes,
But
I
the
was,
other guys.
I know,
it's
I'm always
gonna be
reluctant.
Meta, and it's
I'm
a
always
lot.
reluctant to bring up Xreal because the founder was a former employee with whom you've had some disputes.
Not me, the company.
The company has. That's
I
right.
never,
The company has. He's a nice guy. So whatever happened with the company, we wish him well. But he revealed the new Ultra, the Air2 Ultra at CES, and they are spatial computing glasses. He brought back, right, the Xreal Light was completely way too early, kind of janky. They tried to make their own operating system, which is, as you know, always a dumb thing to do. And they just couldn't make it work. And they pivoted and saved the company with these, screen reflector glasses as an accessory to your viewing accessory, a second screen for your
Actually,
smartphone.
he's doing what a lot of people at Apple would have done first.
Yeah.
A much sleeker version of that as an accessory to the iPhone and then grow up.
Right. Well,
It's kind of
so he's brought the spatial that they jettisoned to kind of get themselves on track.
got cameras with computer.
And now they're right, exactly. And now they're iterating on it, and it's totally sixed off. So it supposedly can outward facing cameras.
Look,
It's got the
Can I
new
just say one
Qualcomm
thing
chip
about
in
that,
it.
Charlie?
Yes, please.
Without is not a direct reference to them, but the IP landscape of this field is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because Apple has done IP filings. I know my company did a ridiculous amount,
Sure.
and it's going to be like the shootout over the next 5 years will be like market share, consumer adoption, but the IP landscape. I look at what's out there, and everyone is stepping on everyone's
when the
IP.
lawyers start
Yeah.
to dig
It's
into
going to
it,
have
gonna
to
be,
get
there'll
sorted
be a lot of
out.
stories about
And I think only the big, super well-funded survive that kind of craziness.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've tried the Xreal devices you have. They're in the category of good enough now. They're still a little clunky. They're not that comfortable, but the visual experience-
tether is
Yeah, but that's gonna go away.
But Apple will do a version of that that's just better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And that'll be the end of Xreal.
I mean, Xreal, has big execution issues. It's not so easy from the other side of the world to make a device and distribute and market it. They certainly they built up their profile in the industry. I don't know what their profile is among consumers. I think it's probably rather low because all the air is being sucked out of the room by Meta and Apple, at least for right now. But I think we'll start seeing these in the wild, and that could start something.
If you think of them as China Inc. owned subsidiaries, they're gonna do well in China eventually, and
Absolutely.
Hong Kong and Taiwan and sort
They're
of.
doing well enough as a well-funded startup to move part of the needle, to keep that part of the vision going. The idea of a glasses form factor experience, and they'll push.
But they represent a unit of China Inc., not really an independent company.
Sure, like all.
And I think what we're gonna see, who's really gonna compete with Apple and Meta? China is gonna be launching dozens of competitors.
Just like in the electric car market, you have the
Absolutely.
same exact thing. Yeah.
And they're gonna follow and copy and innovate. And it's gonna be, that's the real competition here. That's gonna be very interesting.
How we doing on our
Well,
guests
well,
this time?
we need to bring in our guest. I did have one other story that I wanted to talk about this week, which is the launch of Google Gemini, which is the upgraded version of Bard. And I've been using it, and you know what?
It's crazy good, right?
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's, I mean,
It's remarkable
it's
kind of
it's
level of-
ChatGPT, good.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, I use ChatGPT. I surprise myself at how much I find
Mhm.
I'm using it now.
Mhm.
As it gets
Well, now that it's kind of
ingrained,
integrated in this
Oh,
world,
I know.
I use it a lot, just to ask the
and
question.
and you'll never be bored again because you can always just sit here conjuring things up with
Yeah,
Dali.
a 4K answer for something or look at an image.
Didn't our producer make an app that like sort of?
Oh yeah,
relates
Lauren.
ChatGPT to the iPhone?
Shout out to Lauren, our
Yeah,
AP.
Absolutely. she
Could
worked-
not
It
do the
works
show
with
without her. Yeah, she was working on a startup. I
And
don't.
by the way, there's an underlying story. I think, see if you guys concur with this. you talked about Meta kind of turning this amazing corner and delivering all this revenue. I read a number of stories about how when the Apple made their change in privacy and there was this big sort of dip and everyone was concerned about ad revenues and the Meta stock went down. I read a number of articles that Meta put their AI experts on redefining how they could figure out how to target ads and how to deliver relevant ads to people.
Even if
without-
they don't have the tracking.
Right.
Oh,
And they do these
yeah.
multiple tests where they constantly are testing to see what picks up within different audiences, and then they take the AI and it reconstitute that and then delivers those messages and then gives
Of
value
course
back
they
to the
did that. Yeah,
advertisers.
yeah.
And therefore, they basically talk about gamesmanship. They took what could potentially been a death cult for them and used AI and all of their technology around AI to turn an interesting corner there, which I thought was really
They
interesting.
reshaped the game board.
They reshaped the game.
It's a very, very smart, capable company.
Right.
Tommy,
Welcome.
Thank you.
how are you?
I need to turn you up.
Very
so you can
good.
do it.
Do you know Ted and Roni?
I met Roni before. Don't think I met Ted.
I don't know if we met, but I certainly am a fan of what you're doing and the work that you've been doing in both the spatial gaming world and the regular gaming world. So we're thrilled to have you.
You're here at a very special day. And I know you've actually got a lot to say about it. It's Apple's, not only is it the Apple Vision Pro launch day, but Ted and Roni and I have done almost 200 episodes of this podcast, and never have we been live and in person and co-present
In
to
the
the
same
physical
physical space.
world, which is crazy. And we see each other. Ted and I both live in LA, but we have never recorded this together. We're always in our t-shirts in our basements, drinking coffee at 8 a.m. But here we are at the beautiful Sunset Marquis.
Live at the Sunset Marquis.
I know, and Roni's got his best radio voice. It's like, too bad we don't do stingers for the podcast, because I could grab a few here. And anyway, resolution. You have been with the Apple Vision Pro for a while now, developing one of its launch apps.
Yeah, very exciting to see this monumental milestone in the world of XR. It reminds me a lot about when we got the first Magic Leap. Was also something that me personally had been hoping for a really long time to get a device out that people could buy even though a high price originally, both for the Magic Leap and Apple Vision Pro. Obviously, it's a steep price point, but I think that there's a lot of enthusiasts that want a glimpse of the future.
I'm sure our listeners are very curious about what you are doing within that ecosystem, what you are building and when you plan on launching it and what it's going to be.
So Game Room launched today. It's available on the Apple Arcade. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can try it out there. It's crossplay between different devices. So you can play chess or cards or dice games with your friends. So a lot of classic things that you wouldn't normally see from resolution games. A lot of our things are more, regular gamers games with Angry Birds, for instance, that we did for Magic Leap, which was a super fun project. But
that was fun.
This is one of these things when these are things that a lot of people are already familiar with. They know how to play it, and we add a little bit of fantastic elements to it. So
So the
Angry Birds was amazing.
It was amazing in the Magic Leap.
Yes.
I've done it. It's fantastic. But
Agreed.
But there's a deeper instinctual moment that goes all the way back to Angry Birds, because I've made this reference before about Angry Birds as a gaming experience, figured out a way to use the internal GPS of the iPhone, the first or second gen iPhone, pretty early on, to have that experience of a virtual rubber band and a virtual spatial experience. So yes, you're on a traditional screen, but you guys figured something out in terms of the mentality of how people would understand 3D space. It goes back to the Nintendo Wii, right? I talk about the Nintendo Wii being the first spatial gaming experience, because you weren't using a controller, you're using a pretend controller to be a tennis racket, a boxing glove, a bowling ball, etc. You guys tapped into that in the mobile world, And it's interesting that here, are we 15 years later, at 18 years later, whatever it is, continuing that spatial journey. And this is both cross-platform, right? So you can play it on today's semi-spatial device, an iPhone, or tomorrow's truly spatial device, this Vision Pro, right? And they come out simultaneously. Am I stating that correctly?
Yeah.
So I think that's
No,
really interesting.
I think one of the great things with the third dimension here is that it becomes so much more intuitive, right? And especially if you can use your hands and have like really great hand tracking and the direct control of picking something up. And I think that was one of the magic of the first iPhone,
Right.
when you could, just see and have direct manipulation of virtual objects. That was on a 2D device, but
I think
now
people are really excited about what you guys, knowing all the sensors on the Vision Pro and what it can do, and having experience in spatial for a number of years now. You guys are coming in ready, so I think people are quite excited about what you actually will do. Maybe not just immediately, but what happens over the next year and over 2 years as you really get comfortable with what that system does.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic to have another very powerful device in the ecosystem. And I also like how we've been saying for a long time that we think that eye tracking and hand tracking is going to be one of those keys that's going to unlock it for a much broader audience. And that's something I've personally always been very interested in.
You guys also, not to get off of the Vision Pro prematurely, but you announced a deal with Wizards of the Coast to bring Dungeons and Dragons to VR. That may be the biggest title yet.
Quite a big piece of IP
that anybody announced. Yeah. That's a pretty big piece of news.
The world celebrate and dance, and that alone may, be insane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a great honor. I think obviously Dungeons and Dragons have inspired a lot of video games, back from the 70s and up till these days. And it's fantastic to be able to work with such a strong IP that a lot of people really love and have fond memories of playing with their friends. And
can you give us some nuggets on what that experience will be like in an Apple Vision Pro or another?
Well, wait, just let me ask a quick question about Dungeons and Dragons. That's Wizards of the Coast. So and are they owned by one of the big toy companies themselves?
Well, they're still owned by Hasbro, right?
They're owned by Hasbro.
Yeah. Okay, just making sure they're owned by Hasbro. Paramount does the movie side of that world, and you guys are doing the gaming side of that world, which is very exciting.
I will tell you what I saw. You don't have to comment on it, but there's a competitors to Wizards of the Coast. And when I was in LA right before the pandemic, a team showed me what they had built with our device, where you still roll the dice, you have the cards and the gaming table, but then the things that you're doing come to life. And that early prototype was spectacular.
So they grow out of the...
Yeah, and there's 60 to 100 million hardcore gamers who play like Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast. Like, I'm surprised no one went after that hard. So it was a small game studio in LA that showed this to me. It was really amazing. So I imagine like a bigger studio with what you guys are doing with Wizards, which is the ultimate brand here, is going to make something.
Well, there's a game on the Quest called Demio.
Yeah.
That is
recently launched.
It's a similar, the trope is the same. It's a concept of that sort of.
But you need the pass through the world, right? I think you need that Stranger Things moment where you see your friends, you roll the dice. All of a sudden, the dragon comes to life. The characters run on the table. Like, that really feels like magic.
Sure. Agreed.
He's smiling.
So can you tell us a little bit about it? What is it?
Demio is actually one of our games, and something that I've worked extensively with, and we have been trying to be just that. Base it in something that people are really familiar with, like dice and miniatures, and then add this kind of magic of fireballs and seeing your friends and having them customize, getting new hands
and that's all. I mean, maybe this is something you can say or not say, but that's all virtual reality now. But is there a mixed reality version either in the works or coming for the Quest 3 that will allow what Roni was talking about? So you have multiple versions on multiple devices?
Yeah, that's already out, and
Yeah.
people are enjoying it immensely. So.
Right. So that's, so that world is already in existence, which is exciting.
I'm gonna ask you an interesting question, like having, you're playing with the Vision Pro and early developer. Do you think this is the device, this generation that breaks open, or do you think it's a couple more generations from now? What's your take on it?
I mean, I personally see it as a tipping point. When Apple released the iPhone, smartphones were already around, but Apple is such an incredible company when it comes to storytelling, packaging, hardware, and software, and getting everything together into creating fantastic consumer experiences. So I've been hoping for this moment for a really long time, and I think it's a very bold move, and it's interesting to read all the reviews. Some are very positive, some are mixed, and the reason to the mixed is that it's so new. A lot of people don't know what to use this for yet. And I think a large part of that is up to us as software developers. What can you do in this when people now finally have this magic hardware? What can you do with it? And I think it's not only games, obviously. It's a lot of things that is intersecting the world of games and education and sports. Some of the games that we are most proud of is we recently announced a game called Racket Club, wit's you're playing tennis in a social setting. You can just go and watch other people play doubles, and it's incredibly fun to really use your arms, just like you did in the Wii. Remember the Wii Sports was such a awesome way of introducing to grandma, video games for the first time.
Right. Yeah. So you're just continuing to build and create more and more expertise and technical sort of aplomb around this idea of a spatial universe that is artificial, right? We're building simulation-based behavior games, which is what you did with Angry Birds, pull the thing back, fire, what you're doing with tabletop games, now not a number of things. So maybe give us a little sense of the success of your company. How big is it? How long has it been in existence? How many people work on it? Where do you all work? Are you all in the same place, or do you work in multiple places around the world? A little sense for our listeners about who Resolution Games is as an entity.
Yeah, thank you. So I founded the company a little bit more than 9 years ago, and we're now 140 people. We have the main office in Stockholm, Sweden. A lot of talented game developers there. We have a few people here in the US. I'm temporarily here in the Bay Area myself right now. And we've been quite productive. We use rather small teams, very experienced people that try to be as efficient as we possibly can on getting innovative, risk-taking titles out to the market.
Well, I was going to ask that because you mentioned that you're out of Sweden. There is something about the Nordic culture and gaming that creates amazing successes. There are multiple companies in those Nordic countries that have way over-indexed in their success
And
quotient.
pop music,
Pop music, absolutely.
Spotify.
Yes. So do you have any comments on that? Living in that culture, being in the Nordic culture, what is it about? Is it something about the isolation of being far away, but being connected close with technology? There's got to be some reason that this happens, right?
Yeah, I think part of it is weather a little bit. It's
You're indoors.
really, yeah, it's not so easy to be outside. So video games is a great pastime, a great way of meeting friends and hanging out together. So I think a lot of young people in the Nordic countries, love to meet their friend on Discord and just play a bunch of video games and having that as instead of going out in the sun. I see behind you.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, Roni just mentioned Minecraft, which is of course And people often refer to the success point of Microsoft that way too, because of the Seattle dynamic of it rains all the time.
Right.
You're inside on your computer, super productive, and makes logical sense that they would recognize, maybe we should buy Minecraft, you know, kind of thing. So pretty fascinating, really interesting. The psychology of how people, you know, with their weather patterns, create things is interesting.
There's also I forgot the name, but my friends in Stockholm and Sweden talk about this, like there's like a low ego. You don't want to be the tall tree or something. So there's sort of a humility people bring, even if you're famous, you kind of like don't show it off very much. And like that with the work ethic maybe also helps.
Yeah, I definitely think that we try to have a very flat hierarchy and have everybody as responsible for the product as you possibly can be. So, you know, if somebody sees, you know, oh, this isn't as usable as I would like to, no matter if you're working with animations or if you're a programmer, you're gonna want to deal with it because it's your product and you take a lot of pride in your work. And I think the smaller the team is, the easier it is to get into that situation where everybody really feels somebody's got to do it. It better be me. Yeah.
Good. That's great.
Oh, it's amazing.
So what is it like to work with Wizards of the Coast on Dungeons and Dragons? Did they come to you and say, we know how we want to do this? Or did they come to you and say, well, you guys are experts in immersive, tell us how to do it?
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid I can't say very much about that yet. It's just announced that we're kind of teasing that we're doing this. But yeah, it's been, I think, a great situation where we obviously played their game and their world for a long time internally, and they had also some of the key players there had played our game Demio and knew our work in the space. So it felt like a really great cultural match, and they're also big believers in these new technology. That
was kind of my instinct, is that they saw your other game on the Quest and understood that you had expertise in this, that you sort of figured this out, that you figured out the use case and how people liked it, and they said, go with where the expertise is, go with someone that's figured this out and apply our IP to that, because the trope of Demio is similar, very similar conceptually, so it makes sense to me.
We're excited to see what happens.
Yeah, for me, one of the magic with XR platforms is this, that you really feel like you're teleported to the same place as your friend if it's a multiplayer setting. You know, it feels like going to a location more than it does just playing a game. And with Demio, you can play it both in VR or XR, but you can also play it on flat screen. And it's a decent game on, you know, your PC or Mac, but you don't at all get as immersed, and you don't feel that sense of presence as much as you do, you know, when you hear your friend from that side of the table, and it really creates a magic that a lot of people haven't seen before.
Your team has had Vision Pro for a while to do the early development of the game room apps. So have people been using it for productivity and just sort of every day, or is it something you're using exclusively just to develop these specific games? Trying to get a user perspective.
Yeah, I'm afraid it kind of tangents some of the stuff that I'm open to talk about, but I look forward to picking up my personal Apple Vision Pro tomorrow, so I'll be able to tell you more about using it personally after that. I really look forward to it. I think there is so many exciting use cases that I would love to try out, and I hear that there is a lot of different apps already, so I look forward to seeing.
600 I heard this morning also. The yeah, and a lot of them are just ported over from the regular app. Yeah,
ports, but
there's so many developers on it, it's gonna be like a million.
So there'll be, you know, an active community doing this.
Yeah,
of course.
Can I ask you, have you ordered your own?
I made an appointment to use his.
Yeah. So we will,
now I
we
have
will
A
all be
friend in
sharing.
LA, who works at a studio is giving me, a test run
A look
today,
see,
but
yeah.
Nice. Well, hopefully our listeners will not have to suffer too much FOMO and will make it to their local Apple store to get a demo there. They have done a fantastic job launching the product, and just sort of the amount of awareness that a company like Apple can create
Mhm.
is, every once in a while it gets demonstrated to you, sort of like when they launch a new Star Wars movie. But this is beyond that.
Yeah.
This is sort of like a tech cultural moment that we will look back on. I don't know whether we'll say it's an inflection point or a milestone, but it certainly is a very clear marker on the road to always on immersive invisible computing.
I mean, if you're in business school, marketing, this is the ultimate brand power moment.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Like how flexing your brand globally, culturally comes in, and like scale matters, being a $3 trillion company matters,
Yeah.
having every journalist doesn't want to piss you off matters. I mean, but all that is part of the story, right? It's all part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true. And as I often say, one of the great things about my job is you could not make this stuff up. I don't need to write fiction. I just need to write down what just happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I certainly could never make this up. And again, some of these things happen and they just make you understand the world better.
Absolutely.
And Tim, get Charlie a system too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You'll have your.
I don't know if Apple will send Charlie one. for this one.
No, I don't think.
We have ways. We have ways.
Yeah, we Ted's office is nearby,
we
so
have
I'll have
ways.
You'll have your look-see.
I'll have my look-see and use our platform here to blab about it.
Yeah.
Because as opposed to you, I am a leaky mouth.
You are a leaky mouth.
It's your job, right?
Yeah.
Ours is
Exactly.
not allowed to do that so much, so.
Tommy, good to see you. Thanks for dropping in with us. This is a very historic day, not just because we're together, but because this new spatial platform is now available and is certainly going to dramatically affect the
Yeah.
landscape we all live in going forward.
2.2 will certainly go down in history as some moment in time that we'll all look back on and go, that
Exactly.
was.
Well, I'm going to look back on it because I was with you guys live and in person
Live
at the Sunset Marquis.
There you go.
Do you want to do an outro with your radio voice?
What, tell me what
But
to say.
live from the Sunset Marquis.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. This is This Week in XR live at the Sunset Marquis.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Good to see you, Tom.